This week, I have the honor to welcome to the conversation New Orleans novelist Michelle Jackson. She's the author of two great novels, The Heart of a Man and From Darkness to Night. These are the two books we're going to be talking about. Before we get into the video, I just want to remind you, the conversation is a weekly show in CSMS magazine produced by Village Care Corporation. Also, it's important to subscribe to the channel. And if you do, don't forget to click the notification bell so that way every time a video is posted, it'll go directly into your portable. So let's get started. Again, my name is Ardain Isma, the chief editor for CSMS magazine. And with me is author Michelle Jackson, a writer based in New Orleans, Louisiana, a place I've always wanted to go. And you know what? For two reasons. I've wanted to go because I was born in Haiti, and Louisiana has historical ties to Haiti, yes, especially after independence in 1804. And quite surprisingly, I researched not too long ago Creoles in Louisiana. At first, I thought when people refer to Creole, Michelle, I thought they would refer to Cajun language, since the Creole they speak in Martinique or Guadeloupe or Haiti and other places in the Caribbean is a French-based Creole. But you know, surprisingly, the Creole is Creole. You know, I saw people giving interviews, African-American, born and raised in Louisiana, and was speaking the kind of Creole that I can easily understand. You know, it was quite amazing. So Michelle is French, also. I would say. So, I'm not sure if you speak some French words, but the name is Michelle. Yeah. So Michelle, to get started, really, I know you are a published novelist. And there are two novels that are associated with you, and one is The Heart of a Man, and the other one, let me get the name right, is From Darkness to Night. Which one was the first one?
The first one was The Heart of a Man. I wrote that book and published it in 2010, and I think I started writing on it around 2007.
Okay, so may I ask you this now? So what led you to write this novel? Because the title is quite intriguing.
You know, I always have men to say that. It's an intriguing title, The Heart of a Man. What can a woman know about the heart of a man? So I always wanted to be a writer, but took a different path in my life. Grew up in public housing, wasn't sure that I could actually become a writer, didn't have those mentors around me. And so I went through corporate America and working countless jobs. And one of the jobs I had was as a mall marketing director. I ran shopping centers in Alabama and in Georgia.
Really?
And on one occasion, we had a group of CEOs or C-suites put us on a bus. These are the property managers, and ride us around the properties, right, criticize our properties. And there was a gentleman on the bus who I thought was rather rude. Really? And so I started writing a character about him. And what I was hoping to do was to uncover who he really is. Because, you know, you see the $3,000 suit and the title and the arrogance. And I just started wondering, well, what's really in his heart? Like, who is he? Is he a good person? Does he go to church? Does he abuse his wife? Does he speak to his kids? And I started to just build a character around that particular person. And it led me to write the book. I was in college at the time getting my master's in public administration. And when the teacher wasn't watching, you know, I was writing. And before I knew it, I had 75,000 words. I'd never written a book before. My husband was in Iraq. So I'm a military wife, and I was working on so many different projects. I transitioned from the corporate world to public sector, working for Department of Economic Development up in Maryland. And this book just kind of poured out of me. And I really wanted to deal with, does money buy you happiness? And that's what the book is really about.
So actually, let me ask a question. You see, you met this gentleman, mm-hmm. and his arrogance is, the way he acts as an administrator or a researcher kind of really attract your attention. But it was just one time you met him, right?
I met him, I'd seen him a couple of times. He was a really high level executive. So he would come down to the office often, but I never had a conversation with him. And he would not have a conversation with us unless we were at a certain level, in management. And so that became just the driving force behind the character, Conrad.
Okay.
This character he's a 42-year-old man. He is very wealthy. He lives.
Is that the protagonist, or he has named Conrad now?
I'm sorry?
There's a name of the in the book that kind of opens, from the get-go, you talk about him. And Conrad is the character, the protagonist of the story?
Yes, okay. He is. He's very wealthy, and but ultimately he's unhappy because he comes from very humble beginnings, and the wealth brought a number of issues into his life that he did not want. Now, the interesting thing about this character, which I did not think anything of when I was writing it, but my main character in my first book is Caucasian. Okay. And so to get into the head of a white man in the South and to build a character around him and to really take him through dealing with not just his own life and things that he was doing. Was he being moral and how he acted? Was he doing right with his money? Was he doing the right thing with his wife and his son? But also I took him through issues of race and issues of loyalty. Uh-huh. And because we were in the midst of the Obama, the second term,
right,
of the Obama administration, I took him through, voting his conscience. I took him through a lot of things that I felt like, would be interesting to a reader to try to, understand about a character like this. Now, I didn't think anything of writing about a white character, but I did have people come to me and say, well, why wasn't he Black? And
let me stop you here for a second. Okay. I have to be honest with you. I knew you and I were going to have this conversation. So I went online and I got some sneak preview of the book, which reminds me of Harper Lee. I mean, honestly, because I'm a writer myself, mm-hmm. I know what it means. I know when someone writes beautiful novelistic prose. I know what that means. And really that captured my imagination right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. So from what I read from the story, I want more. You see what I mean? And I'm committed to doing so. Now, when Harper Lee writes To Kill a Mockingbird, mm-hmm. I'm sure all of us, right, with that story, it takes us really to the heart of certain literature. And you don't have to read Maya Angelou or Alice Walker to understand it. These are classics in American literature. Mm-hmm. But when I pick up a book written by Michelle Jackson, and I can see the same prose, maybe written in a contemporary fashion, I know that Southern writers will always remain the classics that they all are, quite frankly. And you said that before you wrote this book, you've never read any major novels before.
I never wrote any, no. And I didn't read fiction at all. I've never been a fiction reader. And so to write a book of fiction, a fictional novel, was really outside my comfort zone. And interestingly enough, I wrote the book with no dialogue. I went back and added the dialogue at the end. Because I was so intimidated by trying to get the language right and the communication right. And, you know, I struggled with that. And so I waited to the end, and then I went back and I added dialogue in it. But it was a really great experience for me, because I learned in writing that book that I believe in going through, and I love books that really deal with the complexities of the human experience. And so I wanted Conrad to be real. I wanted people, you know, it's a Christian novel, but he never steps foot in a church. Right. He's a person who has an epiphany, who redeems and figures things out in some way, but some ways or another, but he falls in so many holes, because that's the human experience. I mean, we don't just figure out perfection and then the rest of our lives we never make a mistake. You know, we fall in holes, we get back up, we keep moving. And so he's a very real character, but I wanted to make sure that I could capture him the way that was important. And there were some readers who didn't even pick up that he wasn't African American, because they saw my picture on the back of the book.
Exactly.
And assumed that he was. And then they would say, but he had, you know, like green eyes or blue eyes or something. And I'm like, yeah, you know. And so
that's the character.
Yeah. So it was an exciting experience for me to write that book. Absolutely.
So now, then, let me ask you this. Was that the thrill and the success of this first novel that has consumed you so much, and that what led you to write From Darkness to Night?
Yes. Well, I always wanted to be a writer, you know, and honestly, my career has all been around writing, writing policies, creating programs. All of that was writing. And now I have a PR firm. I write all the time, but I always wanted to be a novelist. From Darkness to Night was a real struggle for me.
Really?
I wrote The Heart of a Man in 2 years, had it published. This book took me 8 years to publish it.
Really?
It took me 3 years to write it and another 5 years to get the confidence to put it out into the world.
I know what you mean.
Because writing a character that many people would think was nothing like me, which was Conrad. And honestly, Conrad was probably more like me than my main character in my second book, because his struggles were my struggles. I just lost my mother, and Conrad loses his mom. I was having dreams about my mother. Conrad was having dreams about his mother. I was able to pour a lot of myself into a character that did not look, or anybody would think was like me. But this book, The Heart From Darkness to Night, is about a 24-year-old African-American woman growing up in urban America, urban Alabama.
Is that the character named Renetta, something like that?
Renetta, right. Renetta. And she is guilt-ridden. She did a lot of bad things when she was a teen that led to what she thinks is her brother's murder. Yeah. The first book and the second book opens with my main characters attempting to commit suicide. Now that is something that it goes back to wanting to take a character from their lowest place to a better place. And so she is struggling, and she's looking for herself. She ends up in a mental institution. Right. She meets a doctor who is there to help her. They become friends, a little bit inappropriate friends, because she's a very attractive girl.
Is that the doctor the doctor she met at the hospital? Mm-hmm. Okay.
They don't have a relationship per se, but there is some romance going on there. He puts a lot of time and attention to her because they're around the same age. He's just out of college. She's 24. He becomes smitten with her. And so she leaves the hospital and she tries to go about her life as if she's okay. And the doctor, her friend, basically said, "You're not okay. You need more help." But of course, she didn't want to take the help. And so she goes out and tries to live her life, and she continues to make mistakes. And then she falls in love, and she lies to her new fiance about her past. And so what happens in the book is that my main character has to go home and face all of what she has had to deal with. And not only that, she has to face what brought her to that breaking point, which has more to do with generational curses that her family had gone through and that she had no knowledge of. So it really deals with the mother-daughter relationship. It deals with addiction. It deals with mental health. But it's, once again, one of those stories that's really about the complexities of the human experience.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You got it right. So, Michelle, my next question is, I know you've published also with Essence magazine, no?
Well, I've written, like I said, I've been writing for years. So I write for a couple of magazines, but Essence was here for the Essence Festival. I took a short-term job working and writing for them during the Essence Festival and was able to get 2 of my articles selected. Okay. So that was very exciting for me.
Exactly, I can imagine. Yeah. So one thing that I've always wanted to do, but because of my professional obligations, and sometimes I feel myself pinned down from doing them, is to gather young people in my community and also to do exactly what you're doing on your neck of the hood. I can see that you've developed a Black writers workspace. So how did you come to create this project?
This is an amazing story because growing up, like I said, I read the classics. I'm big on autobiographies and biographies. So my favorite book is The Heart of a Woman by Maya.
Really?
And so, Maya in her books really talk about that period in the 50s and the 60s when all those writers and artists would come together in New York. And, you're in the midst of civil rights movement and so much is happening, and they were putting out their work knowing that it could lead to something negative. They're still being so pro-Black. And I was always so fascinated with just having all these creative minds around. But I've been so busy over the years, I had no idea that I could actually pull that together. And I'm a military wife, so we only are in one place for 4 years. So the idea of trying to physically bring people together has been tough. So at the beginning of COVID, I released my second book, February the 14th.
Okay.
We were stuck in, at home, starting around the 15th of March.
Right.
And and when that happened, my first thoughts were, I'm not going to be able to sell my book because my first book sold because I got out. I went out to trade shows. I, would go to the church and sell the book. You were physically out selling the book. So I was thinking, well, I'm going to start a Facebook group of like-minded writers and just see what happens. And I thought I would get 100 people. Really wasn't thinking about this being something serious. I wasn't. I'm not gonna. I wish I could say I had this brilliant plan, but I was just thinking I'll start this group. I know a couple of people that write books. I invited them. They came on board. Everybody was kind of like, "Oh, Michelle's doing something else. That's cute." And
that's cute.
Anything of it. And now we have 3,700 members in less than a year. And it just took off. And so I think a number of things happened. First, there were so many other people who were also publishing books in the midst of COVID and just unsure of what to do. But I realized also that there is a huge need for Black writers to not only come together, but for there to be focus on independent and new writers. And I didn't really know that this was a social thing. This was what's happening. We need to focus in on supporting each other as writers. And so in building the page, I just started, and people started to come on. I greet them. We started hosting virtual book fairs so that people can sell their books. I love technology, so I found a platform where we could actually live stream speakers as well as bring in exhibitors. We started a weekly newsletter. We started an online catalog so people can put their books in the catalog and we can sell. I started doing weekly interviews. It really took off. And
that's what I see. So you have weekly interviews. You also have monthly roundtables, and then you have quarterly book fairs. Wow! it just don't stop. Wow.
Like I said, Michelle's always doing something. That's what I hear ticking in my head. It's like, oh gosh, when you said it, it sounds huge. But yes, I love it. It is the highlight of my week to talk to a writer, because writers are so insightful. And
Exactly.
I have not talked to one writer that didn't say something or do something. I've had they cry, they're emotional. It's like when you write, and we just had a roundtable on this whole idea of writing through the pain. It's like when you are a writer, you make this commitment to expose so much of yourself. You have to. And once a writer makes that commitment to themselves and to the reader, they're like an open book. And so when you talk to writers, a lot of times they just pour so much into you and into the work. And so I've just loved the page. I love everything about it.
But when you do kind of creative writing workshops for them too?
We haven't. We're going to start that soon.
Okay.
We have not. This may sound weird, but sometimes you feel like you're not qualified to do certain things. So I've been a little hesitant to be the head of that.
Okay.
But I'm realizing that because I'm looking at so much work on the back end, I'm reviewing, looking at synopsis, reading, I'm like, there is a need to do more, marketing workshops and book, different things. But we've had some fascinating presenters. I mean, we have had people from HarperCollins to come out and speak to us.
So you could use that.
And yeah, it's been really great because these writers are passionate about what they do and they're serious.
And they write across genres, right? Romance, fantasy, historical fictions and all that.
Yes.
Well,
you have all the genres.
You're blessed. Wow, it's a pool of diverse writers. So let me ask you a question. Since you're dealing with so many young people, when you talk to them, how do they tell you literature means to them? Is that the way to express their inner self, or somehow to teach society about things that are considered taboo in society? Because Southern literature is always historically described as a literature of resistance. That's why so many great writers in the United States are born and raised in the South.
Mm-hmm. There's so many times, so many ways that we are strangulated, from speaking or expressing ourselves effectively out loud. Even in 2021, there are certain things as an African-American woman I shouldn't say because I could be penalized,
right.
Career-wise, business-wise, so on and so forth. This generation coming up behind us, they are much more free and vocal, I think, than we are. I'm not here to say that I think that all of it is a necessity all the time, but it is there. There are restraints for a reason, but this generation behind us, they're going to put it all out there. And what I love about it is they're using writing therapeutically. Getting it out.
That's the key word.
We've been taught to kind of suck it up, but I have people on the page who talk about coming out as homosexual.
Right.
What that was like. I interviewed a young lady 2 weeks ago, 16-year-old. She's biracial. She wrote the book when she was 15, and she talks about growing up in a household with a Black father and a white mother.
I watched that one. Was that the girl? I think she was pro-am, and she was kind of confused or something because of her mixed race situation.
Right. Yes, and so
that was good. That was a great one.
I really enjoy them, but they're just, to think about writing a book at 15 about something that personal and exposing things within your family. As a Southerner, you're talking about taboo. That is very taboo. Yeah. And so to see these young people saying, you're not going to suffocate me and smother my thoughts and my feelings, I'm going to put these things out there, is beautiful. I would love to see how it's going to manifest itself over the next 10 to 15 years or 20 years or whatever. But right now on the page, we do have several young writers, and they're using it as therapy, and especially through COVID. And because we have so many now, we have so many new avenues to write. You've got blogging, social media, content development. There's just so many ways to put what you're feeling out there. And so they're taking it.
You know what you have in your hand, you may not realize it. It's maybe bigger than yourself, because we are now in 2020, but close about 100 years ago, in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, there were great movement. There were the negritude movement among Black writers across the Americas and also sub-Saharan Africa. And we can name some of them: Langston Hughes, the great Haitian writer, Jacques Roumain, and so many others, Léon Damas. And they congregated in New York, in Harlem, New York, to talk about the Black Renaissance. I interviewed a French author last week. He lives in Alsace, in Strasbourg, a town not far from Germany. So we spoke at length on the same thing that you and I are talking about now, but it's from the old generation. But the literature in the 1920s and 30s, with those great writers, and especially in 1956 in Paris, when they congregated for the first congregation or congress of Black artists and writers together. And Du Bois was supposed to be the one to lead the movement because of his political views. He was prevented from traveling. And it was Jean-Price Mars, who was the Haitian writer, who was given the task replacing Du Bois, and from where he was in Washington, and he spoke directly to the group. That was a great thing. So it was a great movement. So I'm seeing you with these young writers. And so, unafraid of expressing their views, you have a tremendous, something so interesting that you have in your hand, quite frankly, Michelle.
Well, thank you. I want to do the right thing with the group. I want to make sure that people of color are getting the information that they need, the resources that they need, and also the support. What I love about Black Writers Workspace is we're positive. Everybody is positive. And you know how this writing thing is. You can write a book. No one wants, family will buy it, but not read it. Friends may, buy it, but not read it. Writing is tough. You
love that support, but that's not what you want, quite frankly. I told my friends also, okay, I know you want to buy it just because you want to please me. You're not going to read it.
I want you to read it. I want you to get in there and understand where I'm coming from. And so this page is a bunch, 3,600 passionate people who are positive towards each other. And for me, it was a renewal of my just diehard love for the Black community, because I needed that. I really needed that positivity. You hear so much negativity about the Black community. We can't come together. We that. Black women are angry, all these different things.
Yeah.
And when I started this page and all the love, they call me at home. They call me on my cell phone. This is a nonstop thing. And you're right. It is big. I think it is bigger than me. I do think there is a movement here. And we're going to be pushing to do more. I want to see more big publishing houses pay attention to new and independent authors.
But let's get to that for a second, Michelle.
Okay.
Now, just because you say that, I know minority writers, those who have come to be successful, very few and far between. Mm-hmm. And there's so many writers out there. And that's why so many of them just tired of submitting the work and being rejected, so they go down the road to self-publishing. And you and I know self-publishing is the easy way, but the traditional publishing houses, they continue to hold a very important key. When you self-publish your work, there's a steep mountain to climb. So not every literary venues would be willing to accept your work as such and give it to credit, at least give credit on its merit. Once you say you're self-published or you publish the work yourself, they kind of tend to look down on it, not accepting it at first value, and not understanding the reason why you have to go that route, because there's been such a huge barrier. That's why I was in Atlanta, Georgia 2 years ago. I'm a member of the Atlanta Writers Association. So at a big conference right at the airport, so a whole bunch of Black writers. So we were talking about this dilemma. It's not easy to break through. And although they recognize African-American writers are great writers, but the first thing they tell you, they say, well, you know what? It's kind of tough to sell books unless you show that you can sell your books, or there's a market out there for it, so we can't really sign you on. And Michelle, I don't know if you, so many big, what you call the big three, HarperCollins, and they have subsidiaries to deal with those writers.
Right.
And something called hybrid publishing. But then again, those writers went into another woodblock, because to do hybrid, you have to come up with part of the course. You see what I mean?
Right.
So it's a very tough thing for those young writers who really want to get their work out there. And I think they have something to teach the world, and they find themselves being pinned down by all these barriers that we're talking about. So is there anything, Michelle, that you think that might be done in your area to see if maybe if you could push through a project where an indie publishing house could be developed to provide a venue for these young talent individuals?
I think that absolutely. I think we do need an independent publishing house, but it needs to have the same steam behind it as the larger publishing houses. And that becomes the challenge. Okay. Now, to fix this, it's twofold. I'm going to talk about it from both sides, the publishing side as well as the writers.
Okay.
Self-publishing, there is this idea that standards have been lowered. You're self-publishing, anybody can self-publish. And honestly, it is so true. Anybody can self-publish. So as self-published authors, and I am one of them, I've self-published 2 books. We have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to put out good work. Good work. I mean, edited work, well formatted work. We need to understand marketing. We need to understand how to write a cover, create a cover, what is appealing on a cover. We have to understand how to write a book synopsis. So we really do have to up the game on our self-publishing. And because as long as anybody can publish, a publishing house is going to say just that, oh, you self-published, you couldn't get a real deal. I'm not going to even look at you. And a lot of us, this is what I've learned from the page, a lot of us didn't even try to get a deal with a publishing house. I didn't. I mean, I may have sent out a few inquiries, maybe 3, and then just walked away from it because A, it takes too long to get it done. And B, sometimes the marketing, even with some of these bigger houses, is not as powerful as you think. You have to have, thousands of followers yourself still to kind of get the ball rolling.
Exactly.
And so there's still that onus on you. You have a lot to do in order to get your work to a point where it can be appealing. Now, on the publishing side, they've got to open doors for us because our work is good. I don't care. Exactly. Eliminate those that are just going to publish to publish. And don't get me wrong, there are some who just, I'm going to publish, I'm not going to get it edited, I'm not going to do anything to meet any type of writing criteria and standard. And we have to have writing criteria and standard in everything we do. Exactly. And I read a lot of that. I do. I read people who send me things and I just, you book of poetry, but it's not formatted well, those type of things. However, I also read self-published work that is amazing.
Correct.
Absolutely amazing. Dynamic, well written, well edited, well laid out. But they sell 100 copies, 200 copies. and it goes nowhere because you don't have that powerful marketing, element behind you that you're going to get from a HarperCollins or a group like that. So I think that we have to push these organizations to do a couple of things. You need more Black people in the room as editorial staff. And you need to hire people who are willing to go out there and understand that everybody's story matters. Because I still believe that the fear with our work is that there is this underlying idea that no one wants to read about the Black experience. And it is not true. Our experiences are dynamic.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to follow and dance to all our music, but you've got to understand that's the creativity that's in all of us. And so it really bothers me to know that. I did something, I don't know if you read about it on Medium, but I posted a question on 3 Facebook groups that had a total of 125,000 readers in it, and mostly white readers. And I posted the question of how many books written by new and independent, by Black authors that are not best-selling authors have you read in the last 12 months?
Okay.
That was the question. I posted that question at about 9 o'clock on a Friday.
Okay.
By 12 o'clock, literally 12 o'clock the next day, I had over 500 comments and over 1,200 responses because it was a poll. Wow. I was called racist for asking the question. The bulk majority of the people said to me, I don't care about the color. I don't know the color of the author. Okay. So it was a very interesting dynamic. It was a color blindness in literature. Okay. I'm colorblind. I don't see color. Exactly. In my literature work. Exactly. Why not? Why not see color? It's okay to see that I'm an African-American writer. It's okay to know that. And so there was a lot of hiding behind the idea that because I don't care about the author's color, then there is no bias in my selection of work. Well, we know that that's not true. Right. And that's okay. It's okay. You have the right to read what you want to read. Right. But for us, most of us are forced to read work written by mostly Caucasian writers all through school, right? All through school. And I have no issues with it. One of my favorite books is the Hillbilly Elegy. I love that book. I love writing, period. But the fact that I was called a racist for asking a question like that, the fact that there were so many comments, I wrote a piece about it on medium.com. Because it just struck, I didn't realize that the literary world there was still a lot of color blindness. I need you to see me, and I need you to know that my story matters. And so we have to, on the writer side, we've got to hit the standards. We've got to write good quality work. We have to put good quality work out there. But on the publisher side, you've got to get more Black faces in the editorial rooms. You've got to create avenues for us. You've got to take our work seriously and believe that we can be as creative as anyone else. I think there is also still that can you write? Can you really write? Can you really write? I think that's still a question that there are some people who are asking themselves that about Black people. Can we really do this? And we can.
And that's pretty demeaning to say that.
Yes, it is. And so a lot of the writers on the page are self-published by choice. They don't even try. And they don't try because of the hurdles that you mentioned.
Right.
It's just too hard. It's easier for me to just put it out there in the world.
Let the judge it. Yeah. It's merit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
In fact, to let you know, they say that the greatest novel ever written of the 19th century was a gentleman who submitted his work to so many prestigious publishing houses. They all rejected, and he ended up publishing it himself. It was a 7-volume. You might have heard of it. His name is Marcel Proust. He wrote the big book, In Search of Lost Time, which was a philosophical fiction. They say the greatest novel ever written, but yet no one wanted to give him a chance. He died, and his brother published the remaining volumes of his novel. So you see, so when people are saying that, well, you know what, you have to have a prestigious house, to accept your work. then you'll be recognized as a great writer. And I know that it's false. Behold, that is what I mean. And so you yourself, you don't just say beautiful, but you explain why this thing is beautiful.
Thank you.
It's just like some people, when they describe, for example, two people who are in love, romance, okay, they tend to be too raw on it, and they do refuse to let the reader, at least to give you a chance. If I was the one dancing with my girlfriend, how would I do it? Just please don't give me explicit detail on how it's supposed to be done. Okay, you see what I mean? So that I like that. I like that, and the way you frame your character and the way you structure the sentence itself. It's all about creative writing. So yeah, this is something I always ask every writer in the conversation. Who is your favorite writer? It doesn't have to be an American. Your favorite writer?
You know, I love how John Grisham writes. Short sentences, to the point. I just love it. I also was a huge fan of B.B. Moore Campbell.
Moore Campbell.
Mel Campbell. I always get him a little backwards. She was one of my favorites. I love Maya's books.
Okay.
I felt they had so much heart in them. So I love just good writing, and I love poetry. So Langston Hughes is just one of my favorites.
Too.
Might sound weird, but I like rap music too. So rap music is a draw to me because of the lyrics. Some of them are harsh, but there is a lot of poetry in that and rap. So I like the rhythm of it. And so those are the types of writers that I like, all for different reasons. They all bring
just
something.
Just
one. I don't think I have just one. That is a really, really good question. I don't think I have just one. I would say
you have too many good ones.
I know. And I'm just kind of a classic writer. I don't read a lot of contemporary work, so I'm more of a Richard Wright, Dick Gregory type of. Alex Haley, love my favorite book. My favorite, the autobiography of Malcolm X, is one of my favorites.
I have that too. It's wonderful.
I don't think I can give you one. That's a really great question.
So having said that, have you read Du Bois?
Years ago, yes.
There's this book, The Souls of Black Folks, which has become part of the Black intelligentsia. So you cannot be an African-American intellectual without reading The Souls. He was never a novelist, but he writes so beautifully, which reminds me of a 19th century Haitian author called Antonio Firmin. He was the one who wrote The Equality of Human Races. So his book was a response to the narrative of Blacks were inferior. And so many slave owners, the South of the United States has adopted a book wrote in 1850 by so-called white supremacists, French white supremacists. It says The Inequality of Human Races, where he scientifically tried to demonstrate why Blacks were supposed to be slaves because they were not equal to. And then Firmin himself in his book, which was published in 1885, was a rebuke to that, a scientific and literal rebuke to that. And I'm so glad that in 1900 in Manchester's Hall in London, Du Bois met him and so many other African intellectuals for the first ever Black Intellectual Association. And yeah, it was really interesting. It's a book that I believe every writer of African descent might want to pick up someday and read. It's not a novel, but it's so compelling and demonstrating why Blacks are just equal to white. And he denounced the fact that so many prestigious universities had adopted the notion of the same thing that we're talking about. Right now, we know that they've come to confess their sin and participating in the theories that demonstrate throughout the 19th century that Blacks were inferior. Yeah, it's a great book. Maybe someday when you're not busy or when you might want to pick up also The Equality of Human Races.
Those books changed my life growing up. I mean, I feel like an activist because of what was poured into me by works of art like that, and so many others. Like I said, Dick Gregory, Richard Wright, people who were dealing in the struggle in a way. Malcolm X. I minored in African American Studies in school. We read so much of that. And I went to an all-Black high school where we read more African American books than any, and that really gave me a great foundation as well. The passion that those writers had in that movement is profound. It's why we're here now, in my opinion, as writers, because they were able to open doors and show how intellectual we are and how we see the world is it's beautiful. And I think, I'll definitely look that book up. It sounds like something I've already read. I'm just thinking about that.
I think I have this. This is right here. You see it?
Oh yeah. Okay. I think I have definitely read that. I'm trying
to. Of Human Races. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a compelling defense on Black intellectualism. Mm-hmm. So it's great. I was written in the 19th century, and this book was shelved specifically because of what it entails, what's in it, but also because it was written by a Black man. It wasn't up until the 1940s and 50s. That's when other intellectuals, like Richard Wright, you just mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. He was one of the few successful African American writers. To be a writer, you can achieve literary success, mm-hmm. but very little commercial success. But Richard Wright had managed to secure both of them. He was very successful at doing that. His books were widely read, had become a household name, and a very money machine for the book industry. So he was one of them. So actually, I believe in Black literature, not because mm-hmm. I'm a Black man, but because I know it's literature that is really valuable, that has something to say. And Black writers deserve not just a chance, but also they deserve an audience.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. I think, I said this a couple of weeks ago at a round table that we have to stop being amazed that Black people are amazing. And it is so true. I was watching the movie about that, I can't remember the name of it, One Night in Miami, where, they've got Malcolm and Muhammad Ali and I can't even think of all the other characters in it right now. The singer, and the football player, they're all in the room and they're dialoguing and talking about politics. They're roughhousing and being men. And, this is leading up to the death of Malcolm X. Now, I do know the story is fictional, but from my understanding, the fact that they all came together after Muhammad Ali had become, the champion, was true. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this and, I know so much about the people in the room, especially Malcolm X, that was the first book, that I read outside of school. I was 13. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And there was just so much there. There was just this man who had gone through so much, who was so committed to his faith. It changed me. It changed everything about how I saw the world around me, and how I saw myself as an African-American woman. And I'm Christian, and I was changed. I mean, I love everything about that book and about his story. But I'm watching this movie and I'm just amazed that, I think Regina King wrote it, and it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And I had to say to myself, why am I amazed that Black people are amazing? Like, why am I amazed by that? I mean, we have been amazing forever. Like you're talking about writers from what, 1800, 1700. I mean, boy was talking about the talented 10, things that we don't like to talk about now, but has a lot of truth
Exactly.
to it. There's just so much beauty and intellect in our community, and we have to tap into it. And I think supporting and celebrating writers is a great way to do it.
Exactly.
Because writers, we spend a great deal of time researching, not just researching the work, but researching ourselves and being able to pour that into our work. And so I love that you know so much about all these books. Like, I feel like I want to have coffee with you. Like, we need to have coffee and just talk about books. So this is amazing.
I live by my books, as you could see.
I see.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just to close, I mean, we could talk forever because you sound at times you sound just like a preacher. You can motivate people.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So forget about literature aside. The last thing, and now I know you live in New Orleans.
Yes.
Okay, so I know the cuisines over there, because I'm not too far from New Orleans. I'm in Jacksonville. So I-10 would lead me straight there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be honest with you, I've never been to Big Easy, but I will. I can guarantee you, post-COVID, my wife and I will drive that way.
You've got to come here.
Just for the cuisine. I mean,
yes. And really bring big pants, because you're gonna put on probably 5 pounds.
I know.
I've lived in many cities. This city is the food, the culture, the vibe of the city is amazing. I'm from Alabama, so I would come here during the different events, but I never thought about where people lived and the jobs they had and all that until we moved here. And so I'm really focused on helping the youth here try to get into careers that are very resilient, like technology. Living up north, or I lived in Pittsburgh and I lived in Maryland. I guess there's neither one of those are really north, but living further north,
okay.
It was seeing how those cities like Baltimore were kind of blooming around technology and innovation. I want to see that more in our southern cities, but never would I ever want to change anything about the culture here. It is, I mean, you can second line all day long. You will second line up and down the street and eat the food and just communicate with, talk to the people. They're just amazing. You have to come here. This is a beautiful Black city. I love it. I really do. And, it's not perfect.
Nowhere is perfect.
Nowhere is perfect. Absolutely. I really was, and I hate to say this, but in Pittsburgh, I was very disappointed with how segregated
really
Pittsburgh was. And it just speaks to the fact, as a Southerner, there is this idea that as Southerners, we've just been through so much racist situations and racism. And we forget that in the South, we've had to fight. We've had to battle back to get our voting rights and different things like that. A lot of these other cities did not have that in many ways. They kind of, we're in the northern area, Midwest. We're comfortable, we're okay. And then you live in these cities and you see that there is just so much racism boiling just beneath the surface, because no one wants to talk about it or deal with it. So that was very eye-opening to me, and very much so a reason why I was ready to come back to the South. So I'm happy to be back. So, and I'm happy to be here in New Orleans.
Wow. So if there's any lesson that you want to give to young people, not just in Louisiana, because the whole world will watch you, will watch this interview, this conversation. If there's any lesson that you want to give young people who would want to embark upon the mission of teaching the world using the pen, so what would it be, Michelle?
The pen is powerful. and, you know, continue to write. Don't let anyone tell you not to write. Write what you feel, write about what you want in life, journal. Just be passionate about what you do. And if you feel like it's a calling for you to be a writer, to be an author, um, don't give up on it. What I love about what's happening now in the world with technology and the internet is that there are so many avenues for us to get our work out there, whether it's blogging or social media, or self-publishing. There are so many avenues to get the work out there, but don't forget that the work still has to have a standard. There needs to be a standard. Write well, learn the technique, take classes, go to workshops, but never ever stop writing.
Very good. So with that, I'm just going to say it's been such a pleasure to have such a wonderful conversation with Michelle Jackson, author based in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Thank you so much for having me.